5 signs you might be ready to leave your federal career. That's the topic of our video here today. I think it's a timely one just based on everything that's been happening within the federal workforce this year. We're going to get into some really good information, but I'll give you a little disclaimer first. This is for general information purposes only. It's not specific advice for you and your situation. Really important. We don't want to mess up the situation of transitioning into retirement. You got to do the planning work. You got to do the due diligence that's specific to your numbers, to your situation. All right. Just wanted to get that out there because I think it's that important to do the planning that's specific to you. But with that said, we've got a pretty good list here. I'm going to start it off with a little OLI, or outside looking in. And this probably the elephant in the room, which is morale, right? We know morale has changed this year, and it's likely a lot of federal employees are not feeling great about their agency, their job, their office, any combination or all three. And it makes sense, right? It's just the hits have kept coming this year. And we want to feel good about the place where we work. We want to feel valued, and we don't want to be in a negative situation, but this can't be the only factor to make a decision to transition into retirement, okay? Everything else has to line up properly, okay? Or you have to have some other opportunity that you can fall back on. All right, it's that important. But I do think it is a factor. It's just didn't quite make our list. All right, so the rest of the list, no particular order here, but I think they're all important. I'm going to start off with guaranteed retirement income sources. If those guaranteed sources of income, like your first pension and Social Security, add up to be about 50% or more of your pre-retirement income, that's a sign you're probably in a pretty strong position to consider retirement. Now, I know we typically like to look at expenses versus pre-retirement income, but let's look at it this way. A lot of families will spend 60 to 65% of their pre-retirement income on expenses, lifestyle expenses, whatever it takes to run the household. Okay. We get there, we strip out taxes, we strip out investing and saving, and that's whatever you're left over. That's pretty much what you're spending, right? Unless it's being directed towards some other long-term goal. So that's kind of how we get to that number. And if you're covering 50% of that, whether it's immediately from your first pension or a small gap until Social Security kicks in, you're probably in a pretty strong position to go ahead and retire and feel good about it. Okay. Of course, some planning work that needs to be done to make sure, but that gives you a good sign, okay? And of course, I'm going to tell you, we need to drill down on those expenses and figure out exactly what they're going to be and get granular about it. But again, these are just signs that you might be ready. Number 2 on my list, you can bridge any gap years without doing much damage to your long-term portfolio, your portfolio assets, right? Without spending them down significantly that they damage the long-term plan. Those gap years can be difficult to cover, right? So if you retire at 57, you've got a gap until 62 until Social Security kicks in, it's a 5-year window, and you might have a negative cash flow that you need to make up with distributions from portfolio assets. A couple of things here on how to limit the damage. If that window is short, 3 to 5 years is kind of a max number for gap years that we want to consider. That's a good thing, okay? That's a good sign if you can limit that gap to 3 to 5 years. The other thing is if you can limit your withdrawal rate in that 3 to 5 years to a reasonable amount, you can run hot, right? A lot of our planning work shows us we can run hot for a window. We can't do it over the long term or else we'll deplete our assets pretty significantly. But you could go 5%, 6%, 7%, distribution like that for a short amount of time. Obviously, the disclaimer applies here. You want to plug this in, look at your numbers directly, but we've seen plans that work when that amount of time is relatively short, okay? So it could be okay to run hot for a shorter time period to cover gap years, okay? That's number 2 on my list. Number 3, much easier. We've got FEHB locked in and covered. So that's your federal employee health benefits. If you got those accounted for and locked in the future, whether through an immediate annuity or a postponed annuity where you can pick them up really in the very near future, it's a huge advantage. It'll save you tens of thousands of dollars versus buying health insurance in the open market. So that's another good sign you're well on your way. Number 4, a little bit more conceptual here, but additional years of working won't change your math much. And what I mean by that is your contributions won't significantly impact what those retirement income sources look like or your ability to meet your lifestyle needs. So if you've already done the work, you've met your goals, you're on track, getting that extra 1% or 1.1% from the additional year of service or 2 years of service doesn't move the needle that much. Maybe the time is not worth putting in for that return if you're already on track to meet or exceed your expectations. Okay, same thing with TSP or investment contributions. If you're already well on track and those contributions aren't moving the needle much, that's a good sign that you could be ready to transition. Last one on my list, and we're going to wrap it up. So we're just going to keep this short and sweet. Your plan works and you've stress tested it. Okay, so you've done the math and you've looked at the important things that could go wrong, okay? Things like sequence of returns. So what happens if you have a bad market the first 2 years of your retirement? You've done the math on this. Your plan can withstand situations like that. Inflation runs hot the first 5 years of your retirement. What if you live to 95 or 100 years old? Can your plan withstand that? Okay, that's what we're talking about when we're looking at running the numbers and stress testing the plan, okay? It's important to tie it all together and look at all those factors, okay? Because we want you to be in a strong position, give you an idea of whether this thing could work, and then really digging into it and making sure you're doing that extra level of due diligence. It's like we said, the stakes can be high when you're considering such a big move and a transition out of the workforce. All right, so I hope you found that helpful. Obviously, there's a lot more to consider, but the big point I want to stress here is these are just signs. You've got to do the additional planning work to kind of think through this process of whether now is the right time, whether 5 years is the right time, 2 years, whatever it might be, how your situation looks. So found some value here. Love if you give us a like and a subscribe. And if you're working on something and you'd like a second opinion, let us be a resource for you. Please reach out. We'll see you next time.